Welcome to the channel. Welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before getting into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let's jump straight into it. So, been quite a lot to go through. Actually, I'm going to do it all in a bit of an order for you, and then share some thoughts and opinions and everything on that regarding it. But we're going to kick off with the talk of the town at the moment, which is the midfield news, and let's kick off with none other than Mr. Fabrizio Romano talking about Carlos Baleba. So Romano had the following to say. It was August here on the channel. I told you Man United want Carlos Baleba. Baleba wants to go to Man United. The conversation with the player and his agent was very good, but Brighton at that time in August didn't want to sell the player. In January, it's likely to be a difficult deal, the Baleba one, because Brighton insist on not selling the player. But for the summer, unless the stance changes for January, we have to wait and see. Wait and see what happens. But for the summer, let's say for 2026 for sure, Man United see Carlos Baleba as a primary target. I gave you a video last summer saying Baleba will remain a target if the deal doesn't happen now. Man United want to insist on the deal in 2026, and that remains the case. Man United still want Baleba. Baleba is still very keen on a move to Manchester United. Even more so now, they are doing very well in the Premier League. So that's Fabrizio Romano, couple of points suggesting that Baleba is still seen as the primary target for United. United want Baleba. Baleba wants United. David Ornstein said something similar recently as well, which I'll share with you. But also January will be difficult because Brighton don't want to sell unless they change their stance. So unless, they do decide, well, actually, he's just devaluing himself with his current performances. So do they bite the bullet and try and get what they can in January, or run the risk of him having a really bad full season, in which case, his price is going to be lower next summer if he continues the form that he is now. So maybe that's plausible, but still, that Baleba is the primary target. Now, this follows on from David Ornstein's when he had the following to say last week when he was asked directly who he would sign if he was managing Man United. He said Carlos Baleba because they want him, he wants them. Brighton do not want to let him go, but we'll see what the future holds. So that's David Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano both saying that Carlos Baleba, that United still want Baleba. Baleba still wants to come to Manchester United, and Romano's now saying that he is now the primary target for United as well, which I suppose makes sense because we have done all the groundwork on Baleba. We've agreed personal terms. We've done our due diligence. We would, I'm sure, done all of our background checks and data or data checks. Let me put my teeth back in, and all of that stuff as well regarding Carlos Baleba. So is he still the number one target? It seems that way because this Romano and David Ornstein saying exactly the same things, and if you get two of the best, or if not the best, well, the best transfer journalists around both saying the same thing, then there's definitely no smoke without fire regarding that one. So yeah, give us your thoughts and feelings around Carlos Baleba not being the primary target, and the fact that his form. I'm sure they'll still pay attention to his form between now and the end of the season because it's unlikely this is going to be a summer deal. Sorry, a January deal, you know, unless Brighton do decide to sell in which case United would move for a primary target in the winter window if they become available. But if they're not available, then they're potentially going to wait until the summer. And there's some updates on that I'm going to go through in a second. But give us your thoughts and feelings. Carlos Baleba being the primary target. Do you still concerned? We've had this conversation before in previous videos, and I know a lot of you have some concerns regarding his form. He's still yet to complete 90 minutes, I think, for Brighton this season. I don't think he was particularly good against us, neither for his audition. So I have massive concerns regarding Carlos Baleba. But we're not in charge of United's recruitment. We're not crunching all the numbers, doing all the scouting and stuff. And I suppose form is temporary, class is permanent, is the saying, isn't it? And if United see him as, that they've done all their due diligence and done all the work on him, then and he wants to come as well. Remember, that's a key thing as well with Ineos, that we want to get the buy and players buy-in. If he wants to join United, it does seem like all roads are pointing that way. It'd be interesting to see what value he is next summer because I think at the moment he's devalued from what Brighton want, which actually helps us. So actually his bad form may help us get a deal for him cheaper. Maybe that's the plan all along. I know some of you will say that in the comments, but interesting one. Give us your thoughts on Carlos Baleba in the comments below. Now, this has been a really good piece come out today from Mark Ogden, saying that Manchester United's plan to strengthen their midfield options in next summer's transfer window is being shaped by the prospect of saving £1 million a week off the club's wage bill and reinvesting the savings on players capable of adding youth, energy, and long-term value to the heart of Ruben Amorim's team. Expiring contracts of high earners Casemiro, Harry Maguire, and Jadon Sancho, plus the confidence that Marcus Rashford's £325,000 a week salary will be removed by a permanent move to Barcelona or elsewhere, have given United the opportunity to make huge savings on player costs. And sources have told ESPN that the financial boost will enable the club to compete for the signings required to complete the next phase of the squad rebuild under Director of Football Jason Wilcox and Amorim. So, according to Mark Ogden, what he's basically saying is that United want, midfields next summer. That's obvious. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that midfield's our priority going forward. But interestingly, that the potential of saving £1 million a week off the club's wages by Casemiro, Maguire, Sancho, and Rashford effectively leaving, then that gives us a lot more wiggle room from a financial perspective to go out and maybe get one or two big summer signings instead of, trying to get deals done maybe in January. In the report, it does go on to say, though, despite United relying heavily on Brazil international Casemiro, who will be 34 in February, sources have said that there are no plans to add to Ruben Amorim's midfield options in January, with the club determined to hold out until the summer when they will be able to pursue their top targets. So again, Mark Ogden saying that United are not going to be spending money on midfielders in January because because of the money they're going to be saving in wages. They feel that's going to help them to go for their top targets in the summer. Interestingly, here it says that we rejected the chance of taking Romeo Lavia from Chelsea as part of that swap deal that was being mentioned at the time regarding Garnacho due to concerns over his fitness record. And I would say that we dodged a bullet regarding that. But going back to the report, it says, and although a late flow of outgoings in August helped ease budget constraints, United's financial position did not allow for further moves in the transfer market. Furthermore, January is unlikely to offer the club a chance to make further additions. So this report is basically going along the narrative of the top targets that we want for midfield, unlikely to be available in January, firstly, but secondly, United are unlikely to go for them because the money that's going to be available in the summer is going to help us go for our top targets, which again, I'll share some thoughts on in a second. Just go on to say that United have saved loads of money by all the job losses and everything like that, and talks a little bit around the salaries and signings of Sancho and Rashford and stuff. Interestingly, it does say that Casemiro and Maguire both out of contract next June, they're both big earners, and they're prepared to negotiate new deals with the two players. But then it also says even if Casemiro and Maguire opt to take big pay cuts to stay, United would still be saving around £1 million a week and over $50 million a year by parting with Sancho and Rashford and paying Casemiro and Maguire significantly smaller salaries. And such a saving would enable United to comfortably pay the wages of two midfielders. And it gives a few names, but they're the usual suspect names anyway in there. So Mark Ogden's, with a valid point there, basically saying that, with the £1 million a week, that's insane money, isn't it? That we're going to be saving potentially on wages, and that's even if we reduce the salary of Casemiro and Maguire, and it's unknown at this stage whether they're going to want to take the pay cut or whether they want to stay or not. But it does feel like we're potentially going to try and negotiate those deals, and if not, they're going to be off the wage book entirely. But that their money saved. I would add to that the fact if we get European football as well, then the budget's going to be a lot higher in the summer, plus the wages saved, and that's without any other exits as well. Then that is a massive amount of money, and that then gives United the financial strength to maybe go out and get their two top targets for the midfield, which leads me nicely on into the next story, which is coming from John Cross in the Mirror, saying that Manchester United are in the market for two big midfield signings next summer, and Elliot Anderson is top of the list. United boss Ruben Amorim wants midfield reinforcements as his number one priority to rebuild his squad, with Brighton's Carlos Baleba the other big deal in the frame. Brighton resisted United's late interest in the 21-year-old in the summer, yet we know that. But United also see Nottingham Forest England international Anderson as the other target, and his ability to play number 6 and also as a marauding midfielder means they are ready to pull out all the stops to get him, and that he's attracting huge interest because of his performances and stuff. So according to the Mirror, they're suggesting that we want to go for two big midfield signings and are naming Elliot Anderson and Carlos Baleba as potentially the two that we would go for. Obviously, we've just heard from Romano saying that we still want Carlos Baleba, with David Ornstein as well saying the same thing. Does that then put Anderson in the frame as the other midfield option? Now, the Telegraph on Anderson have said that Manchester United and former club Newcastle United are two clubs with strong interest in Elliot Anderson. Forest will not consider a sale of the England midfielder under any circumstances in the January transfer window. Someone would need to pinch me if we get Elliot Anderson and Carlos Baleba in the summer, because I would think that I was dreaming. That would be an insane upgrade on the midfield, in my opinion. Yes, there's question marks around Carlos Baleba, but if you go off of last season's form, he was one of the best young midfielders in the Premier League and was absolutely smashing it. Elliot Anderson has done himself no harm at all with his current form, and is seen as one of the, he's one of the best midfielders in the Premier League this season as well, and doing really well for England in the international scene and stuff. So that would be absolutely insane for me. I'm going to allow myself to get giddy. I know you're going to bring me back down to earth in the comments. I'm already prepared for it, and boo in advance for you doing that, right? But I would be massively here for that if it meant not getting a midfield signing in January, but getting Carlos Baleba and Elliot Anderson in the summer. I'm cool with that, because I think that is one hell of a midfield upgrade. And actually, I'm getting giddy thinking about the partnership that they could have in our midfield as well. I think it would be a massive improvement, to say the least, on our midfield. So I am going to allow myself to get a little bit giddy. And obviously news changes. Tomorrow it's probably going to be Adam Wharton or Angelo Stiller or Buardi or any of the other plethora of names that we have been linked with in the midfield. And I'm sure there's going to be, ups and downs and different stories and stuff between now and the summer, but I'm going to allow myself to get excited around the prospect of us going for Carlos Baleba and Elliot Anderson in the summer, if it means not bringing in a midfielder in January. It doesn't say we're not going to make signings in January, though, in the reports. It just says that we might not bring in a midfielder if we're going to hopefully have the money available to go and get, our two primary targets in the summer. Doesn't mean we wouldn't look at a wing back or another forward or a defender or something of that nature if they're available in the January window as well. And I was thinking, depending on the question mark for me would be around Carlos Baleba's price. Because at the moment, I don't think he's anywhere near £100 million. I would suggest he's closer to £50 to £60 million personally, based on his current form, and that's probably a stretch. Anyway, the narrative around Anderson is it's not going to be anywhere near £100 million. Ben Jacobs is pretty adamant that it's less than that. He said it's more than 50, but he's got some sort of complicated either release clause or gentleman's agreement, or maybe a mix of both, where he can be allowed to leave for, it's going to be less than 100 but more than 50. So again, you could be talking a 60 to 70 million pound mark. If you can get Carlos Baleba for around that as well, you're looking at the same sort of money that we paid for Cunha and Mbumo to get Anderson and Carlos Baleba. And if we've got more money because of the wage reduction in the summer, going off of Mark Ogden's report in ESPN, plus if we do get into Europe as well, which hopefully we will, plausible. It is plausible. But again, that depends on competition. A lot can happen between now and the summer. And again, I'm just getting giddy off of the news stories at the moment. But yeah, get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think. Would you be up for that? Give us your shouts on that in the comments. Be interesting to read what you've got to say regarding that later on. But yeah, give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts down below. Now, there's been another midfielder that we've been linked with. I'm going to say take this with a pinch of salt for now. So Manchester United are now leading the race for Olympiacos midfielder Christos Mouzakitis, with the Greek club valuing him at around €30 million. Now, that came from Nico, who can be fairly decent, but not the best and not the most credible, I would say. And then the reports come out. This is a Greek journalist that writes for The Sun and Sky and stuff, saying that Man United and Brighton are keeping tabs on 18-year-old Olympiacos midfielder Christos Mouzakitis ahead of the January transfer window. I mean, if Brighton move for a midfielder in January, then, then that's even more confirmation about Baleba, isn't it? I think if they moved for a young player, and there is, I know some of you in the comments, I can already read it now, saying, why don't we just go for the midfielder that Brighton are going to replace Carlos Baleba with, because the chances are they're going to be pretty good, and that's not a bad shout. Good young promising player. 18 years old, left-footed midfielder. I've not watched a ton of him, watched all his highlights, did some quick research and stuff around it. It does actually look like a very talented player. I'm just not entirely convinced on the credibility of these sources because I've heard Ekram Connor say the same thing. And if you've been a subscriber of this channel for a while, Ekram Connor's linked us with about 1 million players in about a month at one point in time, and it's not the most credible source. I've heard it from like 20 Sport and places like that as well, which are not the most credible, but an interesting profile of name. But as we've just heard from like Mark Ogden, unlikely to move from midfielder in January, unless it's maybe a young player like this, young prospect player that's not going to necessarily break the bank and is seen as the developmental midfielder. Then maybe that's plausible to do something like that. But we're not going to. We know we're not going to go for the primary target, and we know the primary targets are probably not going to be available in January as well. But we'll pay attention to it. I'd want to see a bit more credibility regarding this kid before getting too excited or not excited or making an opinion regarding him. But is a good, interesting profile of player. If you know more about the player, they'll get involved. Let us know in the comments, because I'm sure everyone will be happy to or interested to read those later. Now, let's go through a bit of exit news. So, Fabrizio Romano said that Mainoo is very interested in joining Napoli on a straight loan with no option or obligation to buy. He wants to stay at United for the long term. So, again, it's going to be an interesting situation, Kobbie Mainoo, in January. Reality is, though, he's not going to go anywhere, I don't think, unless we bring in a midfielder. And as the reports are, we're waiting. Maybe we could do a Gallagher on loan. Mainoo goes out on loan if they see Gallagher is more fit in to fill the midfield. We're just going to get more game time than Mainoo. Otherwise, it makes very little sense for us to loan a player out to loan one in. That just seems a bit pointless in my opinion. But yeah, we need to pay attention to what happens with Mainoo, because I think him or his agent, I think it's more agent driven personally, and maybe looking to get him a move to get him into the contention for the World Cup. For the England squad for the World Cup in the summer. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. There's been a report though coming out from an Italian news outlet that's quite close to Napoli, suggesting that Napoli are the team to be heavily linked with an interest in United Academy graduate Kobbie Mainoo this summer. But the Italian club have now been linked with a potential alternative. So according to an Italian news outlet that's close to Napoli, they're suggesting that Quinton Timber debunked a story about him the other day, with him being out of contract in the summer. Potentially Napoli might be looking to move for Timber instead, and if they get Timber, then maybe that reduces their chances of going for Mainoo, because then that gives competition to Mainoo, and Mainoo wants to go somewhere where he's effectively guaranteed to play, so he can play his way into the national team, and he's not going to do that if Napoli sign another player ahead of him, because he's just competing with another player there, and why not just stay at United and compete for places here? That makes no sense to me. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on to see whether anything develops regarding that story, because if Napoli obviously move for Timber in January, then that, again, limits Mainoo's options, doesn't it, to go there? But we'll pay attention to that one. And the other player is Xerxes. There's been a story coming out linking him again with a move to Roma, saying Roma in talks with United over a deal for Joshua Xerxes, according to Gazzetta dello Sport, saying that talks are underway over a loan deal with an option to buy. The option would be 35 million euros or 30 million pounds. Roma reportedly pay half of Xerxes' wages during the loan spell, although discussions are yet to be finalised. Some more Italian sources suggesting that Roma going in for Joshua Xerxes, loan with an option to buy. 30 million pounds is around what we paid for him anyway, so we're not going to lose too much money in that deal. We'll recoup, in fact, we'll recoup pretty much what we paid for him there as well. I just don't trust Italian news media. They've been linking with Joshua Xerxes going back to Italy pretty much since we signed him. I think they were a little bit butthurt the fact that he came to United over Milan, and they've been reporting that he wants to go back ever since. So I'd want to see a bit more credibility. But again, we've covered, Xerxes and Mainoo. We know they're going to be two players to pay attention to for possible exits in January, because they want minutes, they want to play World Cup, all that jazz. But let me know what you think regarding that in the comments below. And then I've got a little bit of injury news for you. So Benjamin Sesko was made to come off against Tottenham by the medical staff and coaches, deemed physically unfit to continue. Risk of serious injury if he continued. 22-year-old has been assessed this week, with the injury not deemed as a major one. So this has come from Sully Talks, who's a good insider when it comes to United news, suggesting that it was the medical staff and coaches that took Sesko off, basically through fear of him being unfit to continue and maybe potentially making that injury worse, which in hindsight seems like a very good decision, because it's not seen as that bad, in which case he might be back obviously sooner rather than later. There's been no other update apart from that. I would suspect if it was serious for Sesko and he was going to be out for like much like a cruciate knee ligament or something like that, I think we would have heard something by now. So, and all the other reports are saying that not too serious. So hopefully, hopefully that is the case with Sesko and he's not out for a particularly long period of time. But it looks like the medical team and the coaches did the right thing. Bring him off. Don't make the injury worse, because then you could have been looking at a Martinez type situation where he's out for a while. But yeah, that's the only update really I've had regarding Sesko's injury. And Martinez is expected to be back or to make his return after the international break as well. So the expectation is for Lisandro Martinez to return after international break. The Argentine has worked incredibly hard in the entire year after a horrible injury. Again, come from Sully talks, suggesting that Martinez could be back in contention. I mean, he's back in first team training, was he? Amorim was suggesting that he wanted to play. But he's grounding him and holding him back, suggesting it's not the right time. Hopefully he's survived the training that he's been doing with Argentina, with the national team as well. It's going to be important to get Martinez back. He's such a good player. I'm already, looking forward to the link-up play between him and our new forward line, because remember, he's not played with them yet. I can see his line-breaking passes, or him finding Mbumo on the run, or Sesko, or Cunha. I mean, like, I'm really looking for, like, Martinez is such a huge player when it comes to helping us build out from the back and creating attacks and opportunities and stuff. And I'm massively excited to see him back in full flow. It's going to take a few months, I suspect, for him to get back to match rhythm and match sharpness with him being out for, such a long period of time. But I'm massively excited to see Martinez back. I think he's an outstanding player, and hopefully he's the butcher that we knew, and he can stay injury free as well, because it'll be so important for us going forward. So that's a bit of a boost as well. But we'll hear more from Ruben Amorim's press conference ahead of the game against Everton on Monday evening. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video, because as you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.